everybody, it's Alyce-Kay Ruckelshaus from Threshold of Hineni. I actually am looking at the time right now, so I'll know how we're doing. I know that I said that the next thing we were going to do was envelopes, and I actually cut out a bunch of envelope pieces here, but I decided I want to have belly bands first because I want to make sure that I have plenty of room for the belly bands, and because I like to put envelopes in the belly bands. And I want one of the belly bands to be Frankenpaper, so I need to do the Frankenpaper first, then the belly bands, and then the envelopes. So that's what we're going to do. So I've got a bunch of scraps here. Now, not all of these are from this journal. Well, maybe I do have enough. I think I do have enough for a belly band here from this journal, so I think we can do that. So let's just go ahead and grab these pieces that we're going to use for this belly band. I'm going to set aside the journal. I've got, I cut out a piece of the packing paper so that I can use that as kind of my canvas, I guess you would say, for what I'm going to put the Frankenpaper on. Now, I usually do my Frankenpaper in whole sheets, like 8.5 by 11 sheets, or in long strips. But I wanted to be able to show you one from start to finish, and then how we're going to use it. We may have time just to make the Frankenpaper today, and then put it in with some other belly bands tomorrow is probably what we're going to do. But I didn't want to take the time to do a whole sheet of Frankenpaper. Okay, so for this, I sew. A lot of people glue. I think most people probably glue. But I like to sew it, unless it's a card that you're going to write on, then I usually will glue it so that it's not all sewn all over it. Okay, so these are, for this small of a piece, these are kind of big pieces of paper. So we're going to take these, and I don't really want white, and it's hard to distress it later because of the stitching on there, so I'm going to go ahead and quickly, and I'm putting some more ink on my blending tool so that it's just ready to pick up, because I'll just be using it for little bits at a time. Okay, so what I like to do is I don't want to have a straight edge on the sides, and so I will put this along the edge here with the torn part. Okay, and so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to stitch not over on the edge. I'm not going to stitch on the edge because we'll be stitching all the way around the edge when we're done. Right now what I'm doing is basically stitching these to keep them in place. Okay, so I'll show you where I stitched in just a second. I don't cut the threads. I love having all the little threads hanging off, so I stitched it right here along the edge because I'll put something else over that. That's the other thing, is if you stitch, like if I had a torn piece like in here, okay, and if I stitched on the torn part, I wouldn't be able to slide anything else underneath, and I would end up losing that beautiful torn piece. So one of the things I like to do is I like to look for the plainest pieces first, because they're going to get, you know, pretty much covered by other things. So I don't spend a lot of time sorting, but I just want to get a few plain pieces to go on first. Okay, I do have some packing paper, but I only have a little bit of that, so I don't want that to go on the bottom. I want that to show. All right, and so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this piece. I'm not going to put it right at the edge because I want a torn piece at the edge, but I'll put it kind of in the middle here. And I'm actually going to stitch, yeah, I'll stitch down along one side. Sometimes I stitch in the middle so that I can shove something over both sides, under both sides. But since this is all a cut edge, I don't really want to do that. Okay, so I've got kind of a plain piece here with a torn edge. Let's just go ahead and distress that a bit, and then we'll put that on, and this can be along the edge. Mainly because, and I don't have to have it straight, I'm going to turn this crooked so that the torn edge is going to be, you know, straighter. Usually I have a lot of torn edges just already before I start, but we've been doing a lot of cutting instead of tearing in this journal, and so I don't have very many torn edges. Okay, this is pretty plain, so I'm going to stick this in here so it can be part of the background, and some of it will still show, but we'll probably end up covering most of it. Let's just go ahead and sew that aside. By the way, one of the things that I do as I'm making a journal and cutting pieces and prepping and stuff is I was I going to say? Oh, I save pieces for Frankenpaper, but I sort them into boxes according to their color scheme. So like this, I saved this specifically for this project. And usually, okay, like, so while I'm saving them, while I'm working on a project, I will save the pieces in a separate container usually, so that I have just pieces from that project, so that I can, sorry, it's hard for me to think and do this at the same time. So I can, if I want to make something just from the paper from this project, like I am right now, so that it just totally coordinates with the book, I will be able to just draw on that particular bin or box or basket that I've been keeping it in. Oh, that's interesting. That fits right over that. It's almost the same. And then once I finish that project and I know that I don't need the scraps for that particular project, then I add them to a bin of scraps that are specifically that same color scheme, like purples or earth tones or Tuscan colors, just different things like that. Black and white is one of my categories because I really want to do some black and white stuff at some point. And so, yeah, so then I have those and I can, one day when I feel like crafting, but I don't really feel like being super creative, that's a great day to work on Frankenpaper because it doesn't take a lot of thought. It's just, a lot of putting things on and either sewing or gluing it. And so it's a really good thing to do when you're not feeling super creative. Okay, so see, I've got a little bit of the bags of the packing paper sticking out there, but that's fine because the packing paper is really cool looking. Okay, so, but I don't want a lot of the packing paper sticking out because that's going to be the background. I like doing this journal this way, you guys. I had mentioned at the beginning that the reason I wanted to try this was because I had realized that, we use these gorgeous papers for our pages and then we cover them up. And so I thought, well, this would be kind of fun to use the gorgeous stuff for the pockets and stuff, and the background would just be something that we don't mind covering up. And I've liked it. I also like the real crunchiness of this packing paper. I mean, it just sounds so cool. And this, you can write on this and it writes on really, really nicely. So, okay, I want some, well, I still need a little bit more background stuff. So let's do this here. Okay, I'm going to put this right along down here. So the torn part is sticking off there. Okay, I mean, just don't think about it too much. Just take your paper and just put it on. Okay, and then I've got this piece here that I think I'm going to actually tear. And this will become part of an edge piece. Let's see, like that right there. This DigiKit doesn't have a lot of contrasting colors, so it's just very, I personally tend to like a lot of contrast, but I like this kit. It's very soothing to me, and I think that is probably because it doesn't have too much contrast, even though I'm always going for the contrast. Okay, so that's going to go right there, and see how I'm turning it a little bit. I don't want everything to be perfectly straight. Some people do, and that's fine. If you like your stuff perfectly straight, that's fine. I personally find it annoying. There's this part of me that just really doesn't like things to be perfect. Okay, so now I've just about got the base covered here. Okay, so I'm going to put that right there. I have just a little bit in that corner that still needs to be covered. Okay, so let's get just a little bit of torn piece here to put down in that corner. And then we get to start doing the magic here. I'm gonna slide this under that piece Okay, so that I'm not covering up any of the torn stuff. And then I'm just going to stitch this right on here. It's kind of a small piece because I just had a small space that I wanted to cover. Could have used a big piece. That would have been fine. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to look for the pieces that are going to contrast a little bit more, like this. I'm just going to tear that part off, and this for sure, this, and this. We actually have quite a bit. Wow, we have a lot. Okay, and then I think I also want some of this to just use in little places. Not a whole lot. In fact, probably not even that whole piece. 3 pieces is fine. Okay, so I'm going to put the packing paper on next. This. Okay, and now I am going to start kind of sewing on the edges. I'm still only doing one edge because I still want to be able to like slide stuff under possibly, but I'm not... I am doing it on the edge. I'm not going down the middle unless it's a really small piece like this. When I get to the small part, I'll probably just go straight down the middle. Okay. All right, see, and my stitches didn't catch this very end, but that's okay. We'll catch it as we go around. All right, and then this I think I'll use. I'm going to need to ink this up again. Okay, so I'm going to use this piece. I think I want to ink it pretty well. And that's squared. Okay, and we'll do this. I'm looking, I don't want to cover up this because that's already pretty contrasting, so I think I just want to put it right here. And I'm going to sew one side of it. Now there are lots and lots of videos about Frankenpaper online, and you know, I would recommend that you check out several of them because everybody does it differently, and you might find a method that you like better, or just kind of combine methods that you like. But I would really recommend watching somebody else's videos for this too, because everybody has a different way of doing things, and you'll just learn from it. It's kind of fun to binge watch one artist, and I really enjoy doing that. But then make sure that you also watch some others so that you don't, so you know, so you can kind of like develop your own style and everything, which you will if you watch a lot of different artists. Okay. And see how I tore that? I didn't want it to be squared, even though I was tearing it. I wanted it to have, you know, a little bit of different shape to it there. I'm gonna stick that. I don't want to cover up the bags, the packaging stuff. Let's make this smaller. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm just, you know, adding some more interest to it is all, by adding some different papers. There we go. And by putting them at different angles too. It's actually easier to do a larger piece. It does take a little bit longer, obviously, but I think it's not like if you added all of this, you know, pieces this size together, it's easier to do a larger piece because you can work with bigger pieces of paper, bigger scraps. Okay, I think we need just a little bit more. I don't think we're going to need that piece. Let's do some of this. And as I get to like where I'm almost done, I do tend to use smaller pieces, either pieces that were small originally or pieces that I've made small. Just so it looks more, you know, like a crazy quilt kind of thing. Okay, so I think just a couple more pieces here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of yarn and twine to it. If I had fabric scraps, if I had been using fabric, then I would add some of that. I might have some lace, and if I do, then I'll add some lace. we go, like that. That's good. Okay. And that's why I'm leaving, you know, like these edges open and stuff, because I'm going to want to have yarn and stuff peeking out from under those. Okay, that's good. Let's put this down here. Okay. There's so much of that same stuff right there. Okay. So I think that's it for the paper. I think that's really good. We've got a real variety of stuff going on there. Okay, and I'm going to put all this back into my little box, my little basket that I've been saving it in. So I want to look and see if I have any lace scraps here. Ooh, there's a little bit of this, the flowered one. That one's nice. And this. Okay, that's plenty right there. I'll cut that up into smaller pieces. Okay, so we've got one whole flower and then a couple partial flowers. So we're going to cut it up that way. Okay, and then we've got this. I'm going to cut into several pieces right here, like that. Okay, and then I'm going to take some of my husband's yarn, and I'm not going to use all this. That's way too much. Let's just pull a few pieces right there. That's good. Okay, so I'm going to start with the yarn. I want the yarn to be sticking out from under. And see how I've got kind of a glop of it? Okay, I'm going to stick it out under here so that we can have some yarn sticking out from there. Isn't that nice? It's really soft yarn. It's from, it's linen with some rayon wrapped around it, which the rayon was kind of unusual for Bill because he really preferred natural fibers. But I think I don't know if he ever made anything with it. I never saw anything that he made with it, but he did like it. And he was the one who actually suggested that I use it in my junk journals, and then he wanted me to get more to use. So I've got quite a few different colors and stuff to use and different fibers. Mostly, I think mostly cotton. I might have some cashmere, I'm not sure, but the thing with cashmere is it's not all pretty and fluffy until you wash it, and I'm not going to wash, you know, yarn. You wash a sweater, but it has to bloom, and so it has to be washed to make it soft. Okay, let me see what I'm doing here. There we go. Okay, so what I've done is I've tucked the yarn in under these, so it's sticking out like on two sides of the corner, and then I just sew over that corner and close it up. Okay, so now I've got some lace, and I can do the same thing with the lace. I can have it sticking out from different places. Like I think I'll stick some out right here. See that right there? Okay, so I'm going to just stitch over that. Thought for a second that my needle unthreaded, but it didn't. Okay, or you can just stick it on top of stuff like this flower. I'm going to stick on top right there. And I'll just stitch right through the middle. Okay, so some of it will stick up, and that's fine. It looks nice that way. It adds a lot of texture when you add these things. Okay, so I think that I want to put a couple more pieces of lace underneath, you know, sticking out, and then I'm going to sew the rest of these closed and add the rest of the lace pieces on top. Okay. Sometimes I use twine too, and that makes a really nice texture too. Okay, so see how right here I sewed down the paper that's holding the lace in place, and I sewed over some of the yarn. And one more piece that I think I'll stick out from under something. Maybe. There might not really be a place to do that. Right here. Okay. I like to have the tightest parts under stuff, and then leave the loose parts, because those will hopefully fray a little bit over time. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I've still got 3 pieces of lace left to put on. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and I'm going to look here and I'm going to find any loose pieces except, any loose edges, except all the way around the outside. Okay, because the outside we will sew together, we'll sew at the very, very end. So I'm going to just get all the loose edges of paper down. I'm not worried about the lace, I'm just worried about the paper, because if something catches on it when it's in your book, then it'll get torn. So you just want to make sure that all the little edges are sewn down. And, you know, the more stitching, the better. Sometimes I just like, you know, zigzag all over because I just want to add the texture. And lots of little, you know, threads, because I don't cut, you know, I cut my threads leaving about 1 inch. See how fuzzy this is with all this, all this hairy stuff sticking out there? Okay, are there any more pieces that are loose here? Here, oops, there's a couple pieces that we need to sew down. That's the other thing, is on a full sheet of paper, it doesn't take as long to do this either, because you can just kind of sew from one piece to the next. Okay, so when I was sewing, it kind of pushed this lace a little bit hanging off more. Ooh, and that's kind of loose. I'm going to sew it down some more. But I like that. I like that hanging over. I don't want it to be, you know, straight edged or anything like that. So I'm going to sew that lace in place a little bit better. Okay. And continue looking to see if I have any more loose pieces. There's one right there, so we need to sew that edge down. Edge of paper. And I'm just, because I've got kind of a big piece here, I'm going to go ahead and just stitch right across it too. I don't need to hold it down. I just don't want to have a big area that doesn't have stitching, because it's pretty and adds texture to it. Okay, and there's one more place here, and then I think that's it for stitching this stuff down. We're almost out of time. We're going to make this at just the right amount of time. Okay, let's stitch on a couple more pieces of lace. In case I get cut off, because I'm getting really close here, in case I get cut off, what I'm going to still do after this is I'm going to distress the edge all the way around, and then I'm going to stitch all the way around, and then that'll be it. I'm not going to put this into the journal today. I'll put it in next time when we do our the other belly bands. Okay, so just in case I get cut off, that's what I'm doing. Okay, so I've got everything sewn on, all my little pieces of lace, and let's go ahead and quickly distress around the edges here. Just get it all inked up real nicely. Okay. Didn't have to do a whole lot because mostly I have torn edges that I had already inked up. I do think I went just a little bit more yarn right down here because I don't really have anything there. So I'm going to just put a big glop of yarn. I'll show you when I stitch it here, after I stitch it. There we go. I just put it all in a glop, and as I sewed, it just kind of spread along like that. Isn't that kind of cool? Okay, so now I'm going to sew all the way around the edge, and then we will be done with this. In the next video, I will make some other belly bands, 2 other belly bands, I think, and we will put them in the journal. And if I have time, I want to work on the piece for this center page, but probably not. I usually do like a horizontal belly band. These will be vertical, and then I'll do a horizontal belly band for the center. Okay, there we go. We finished, and I don't think my camera's gone off. So there we are. That is a belly band, and it'll go on a page like this, except hopefully not something with that big of a edge. And then you can slide stuff under it. Just kind of holds things in place. So that's Frankenpaper, you guys. have fun with all your scraps, just making huge sheets or rolls of Frankenpaper, because you will use them. They're great fun to use. And if you don't want to make Frankenpaper, I have some sheets in my shop. You can look at those. And I think that they're very well priced for you, and different colors and everything. So, and if you don't see colors that you want, let me know, because I have all kinds of colors of scraps that I need to make into Frankenpaper. All right, I love you all. I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.